Morning, Knicks Nation. Today is Monday, the 22nd day of July, 2024. Hope you had a good weekend. Hope your family had a good weekend and that you're safe and healthy and your family's safe and healthy and that the needs of you and your family in terms of food, shelter, clothing, as well as health are being met today. Blessings upon those that work in the healthcare field along with the first responders who every day are trying their best to save lives. Those also that pick up garbage, keep our places clean, and those that make deliveries for our convenience. Double blessings on the men and women that are here trying to help rescue, deliver, and recover teenagers and children that are victims of child molestation and pedophilia. People that are also victims of prostitution and child prostitution, pornography, child pornography, human trafficking, and sex slavery. Double curses on the perpetrators, the profiteers, and the perverts that create demands for these things. Finally, double blessings upon the homeless. Nearly 600,000 men, women, children, senior citizens, families, veterans, homeless in the United States of America, and millions around the world in similar or worse conditions. Blessings upon them, for theirs is the kingdom. This, brethren, I was thinking about this over the weekend, and I was thinking about how the Knicks, and many of us kind of feel it, the Knicks are poised to win big right now. They're in a good position to win big. Media doubts notwithstanding, but it reminds me a little bit, and we were talking a little bit this weekend about the end of Big Three era. When Chris Bosh, LeBron James, and Dwayne Wade joined forces in 2010 in Miami, 2010, 2011, and won 2 championships in the 4 seasons they were together. One of the things they did is each of them left money on the table. Each of them left money. Each of them signed at the time, it was a 6-year, $109 million contract. Now, for 6 years, they could have each got more than $124 million. But they left about $15 million each on the table. And that's what's called leaving money on the table, because if each of them, like if Toronto would have kept Bosh, if Cleveland would have kept LeBron and they'd stayed in their teams, and Miami would have kept Wade, they would have made more money individually on their respective teams than they did joining forces. But they took pay cuts to get together. Okay, now they were each making about $18 million a year, but they could have each made more than that. They could have each made 20 plus million a year. So they took pay cuts to play together. And when they did, they pretty much, and Pat Riley at that summer, when he knew what was coming before anybody else knew what was coming, he's kind of a Don himself, and he was a Don before I was Don, but he started releasing players, trading players away, trading picks to get players off his roster, to get salaries off his roster, to get these 3 in there. And they did. And then he added minimum contracts after that to fill out the roster. And that's how they had 3 guys, all in their primes, even before their primes in some cases, that were coming together on a pay cut to help the Miami Heat win 2 championships. Well, what does it have to do with the Knicks? Now, the structure today is different. And people say Jalen Brunson left money on the table. It's really not the same thing. To this year, Brunson signing this year, the max he would get was the $156 million that he got. If he'd waited next year, we know he'd have got over $200 million. Those 3 guys left money on the table in that same year, that they could have got more money that year. And they didn't. Matter of fact, before Chris Bosh signed with them, Dwayne Wade and LeBron was trying to convince Carmelo Anthony to do the same thing, but Carmelo wasn't taking no shorts on the money. So that's why he ended up in New York. But that's another story. But they took pay cuts. So nowadays, though, for example, I like to use Phoenix as the most recent example. So Phoenix signed Durant, they signed Beal, they signed Booker, right? So they have so-called Big Three. But nobody took a pay cut. All of those guys got maximum contracts to come to that. And this before that, when the Nets got together with Kyrie and Durant, and then later Hart, nobody took a pay cut to come to Brooklyn. They just decided to come to Brooklyn. Whereas with Miami, those 3 guys took pay cuts. Now, it works out very similar even though nobody took a pay cut with the Knicks, it works out very similar in that the Don has a range. So first he extends Julius Randle. He extended Julius Randle about 120 million, I think it was. And everybody was saying Julius could have got more. Maybe he could have, maybe he couldn't. I happen to think he wouldn't have been able to get any more than that from another team. But he got his money, and the Knicks saved money in extending him when they did. Then, of course, we know the Brunson story, okay? Now we got OG. Now, OG pretty much got a maximum deal. He might have left a little money on the table, but not much. So he got his $212 million over 5 years. And then you got an additional, now you got Brunson, you got Jew, you got OG, right? You got all of them in your big three. And now they have supporting cast now. And then they went and added Mikal Bridges. So you got Mikal Bridges, and you got him on I won't say cheap, because $90 million ain't cheap no matter how you look at it. But in terms of NBA money, Mikal Bridges is worth a lot more, and he could get more. He's at $90 million. You got Brunson at 156. You got Jew at 120. And you got now you got OG at 212. So they were able to fit 4 players, and not only that, for Miami at the time, as I mentioned, they were trying to get minimum contracts. They would get guys to come in on minimums, like Shane Battier or Ray Allen. They would get those guys on smaller contracts than they might have been able to get those guys elsewhere that was trying to win that championship. But now the Knicks have, aside from the 4, Josh Hart, DiVincenzo. They got them. They got Deuce on a $13 million deal. And then, of course, Mitchell Robinson is a steal now at $14 million. Okay? And so they really have set themselves up very well to get talent and get that talent without it killing their cap. Okay? So the Knicks, and even with this whole center situation that we're looking at right now, one of the reasons for the holdup, and we don't know how it's going to play out eventually, but one of the reasons for the holdup is the Knicks are trying to stay under the second tax apron. See, when Pat Riley did his moves to get that big 3 in there, and they all agreed to take pay cuts to win the championship, he had them under what was then the cap for that time, so that he can save money and put them 3 together and then get some minimum contracts around them. Well, the Don now has the Knicks $17 million under the second apron. Okay, so now if whatever they're going to do to get this 5 or to re-sign Precious, they will stay under the second apron. Okay, so now that being the case, he has put together not just a big 3, but really a big 4 when you're talking about Brunson, Mikal Bridges, OG, and Juju. He put together. Now people say, well, that's not really a big 4. I'm always going to get some idiot to say that, but listen here, you got Julius Randle, and people disrespect him too much, in my opinion. I was on board with that when he came from New Orleans as the turnover machine. But since he's come to New York, and since he's been under Tom Thibodeau, he's been an all-star, NBA all-star 3 times, and all-NBA 2 times. And if you can't respect that as a very top-level NBA player, I don't have to talk to you, because that's what you got with him. And now you got another all-star in Jalen Brunson. You got 2 guys that are in your starting lineup that have been all NBA defense in OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. Okay? And so when you put that together, plus what we already know from the performance of DiVincenzo, from the performance of Deuce, from the performance of Josh Hart, you got something. You just need that backup center at this point. And this is the worst case scenario. Really, the worst case scenario for the Knicks is to bring back Precious and keep Jericho Sims. That's the worst case scenario. You can't get, so if you get a better 5, like if you were able to get a Nick Richards or a Clint Capela, if you were able to get that, that makes it even better. But your worst case scenario, the team as it now is constructed, they're poised to win big this year. Okay, and that's why in every year I try to be conservative, and usually I'm right since the Don has been in charge in terms of the win total. Last year I said 50, they got 50. Okay, year before that I said 45, they got 47. The only year I was wrong was 37 wins, and that was because of the starting backcourt. Okay, but in the year they got 41 wins, I was predicting 40 wins out of 72. They got 41. This year, I'm telling y'all, at least 55. Now, some people say 60. I don't ever try to go overboard. I try to stay conservative. This team is poised to win at least 55 games this coming season. At least 55 games. And so when you're looking at that, they are in the conversation for a championship right now. And again, I myself have to repeat that to myself because it's been a very long time since the Knicks were legitimately considered threats to win the NBA title. Okay, even during the 90s with Patrick Ewing at his prime, they were threats to get to the finals, but everybody was picking Jordan for good reason to win the championship. Okay, and the best opportunity they had was when Jordan retired and they had Houston, and we know what happened with Hakeem Olajuwon in them. But then Houston countered by getting Clyde the Glide Drexler, and there you go. So that was back then. But now the Knicks are a legitimate threat to beat Boston in the East and represent the East in the final and win the finals. They're a legitimate threat. And the reason, one of the main reasons they are, is the financial management that the Knicks have done in getting these guys together. See, beginning last year, R.J. Barrett was our starting small forward. We had Emmanuel Quickley on the bench. And there were rumblings that something might happen because Emmanuel Quickley couldn't come to an extension agreement with the Knicks. And it was known that Emmanuel Quickley wanted to be a starter. And he was never going to start, but with Jalen Brunson now on the team. He was never going to start. So it was kind of known something was going to happen. I didn't expect it to happen at the trade deadline, but something was going to happen. So you had Emmanuel Quickley on your bench. You had DiVincenzo on your bench with Josh Hart, and you had Isaiah Hartenstein. You started with the two guard was Grimes, and then you had RJ, Grimes, Brunson, Mitchell Robinson, and Drew. That was a very good team. But of course, with RJ, Grimes, Emmanuel Quickley, these were young players that really weren't near their primes yet, and they anywhere near their prime, and they were still developing. So again, I mentioned that the trades that took place to bring DiVincenzo into the starting lineup, to go get OG Anunoby with Precious, and to trade RJ and Emmanuel Quickley and Grimes were a trade to say we're no longer developing, we're win now. Which really started with the signing of Brunson, but the rest of the supporting cast that Don put around him, you're in win now mode because Brunson's in his prime, OG's in his prime, DiVincenzo's in his prime, Julius Randle's in his prime. You got a bunch of guys that that you're dependent. Mikal Bridges is in his prime, so you got a bunch of guys just like with Miami that were in their prime that you brought them together, and you brought them together in a very good salary structure so that you're not going to be paying a whole bunch of taxes while you're still in the championship contention. Very difficult to do. Like, look at Phoenix. Like I said, Phoenix is paying most of their team salary is in three guys. Most of their team salary is in three guys. The Knicks conversely have spread out the salaries, among four guys, and then you got other guys like DiVincenzo and Hart, very good supporting cast role players that'll get you that championship. And so that's why the Knicks are where they are, and they're poised to win big. And we should all be excited because this was done very well, very, very well. And what makes me even more hopeful is last year was almost the worst case scenario. You lose Mitchell Robinson for more than half a season. You lose Julius Randle for about half a season, right? You lose OG Anunoby after you just got him and you started winning for half a season. So you lose all of those guys and you still finish second in the East. So it's not just like if, for example, Miami was to lose LeBron that year, they wouldn't win no 2 championships. Okay? Even if they lost Bosh or Wade, they would not win 2 championships. They need all 3 of those guys. The Knicks have the 4 plus backup at key positions. backup. See, so we should be excited, and that's why I realize that's one of the reasons why people are so anxious now, and we don't have nothing to talk about. So we talking about trading people and who we gonna get. We talk about summer league like it's the NBA finals. It's because everybody's kind of know in the back of their mind. I mean, not everybody. I'm talking about Knicks Nation. We know in the back of our mind, we got something. We really do got something. The league is put on notice. Not only are the Knicks back, we here. And look, we got something. And so, and now you looking in the summer, Juju's looking like Juju. Brunson, the cast is off. Mitchell Robinson looking really good. OG, McCall is the Iron Man, but we don't want to jinx that. But we looking good, y'all. We just need, like I said, worst case scenario is you bring back Precious and you have Jericho Sims. Now, is that the best scenario? No. But even with that, then this could be Boston. Even with that. Okay? So we good, y'all. We really are. And we're all, including myself, counting the days until training camp. Okay? Of course, the Knicks got one more move, possibly. But like I said, the worst case scenario is Precious and Jericho. If they could do better than that, that's that much more better. But in the meantime, you'll enjoy your Monday. So